Hello, my block of the month friends. Here is our log cabin star, which is our block number 5 for this year. And I wanted to let you know I am giving you a chance to try driving without your training wheels. I have removed my stitching lines that go into the seam allowances. You'll have to figure that out. I'm giving you a chance to give it a try. And I've also removed the straight of the grain for a couple of the blocks and some of the numbers. And I'll give you the reasons shortly. The best news is this is a simple block. We're not using templates. We're going to pre-cut our pieces from triangles and squares, and you are going to love making the flying geese. We're going to be playing around with this as we go forward, and I'm going to share some special fun things to do with flying geese that are foundation pieced. But we'll get to this block. So very simply, you can see we have a square in the center that's made of log cabin blocks, logs in our cabin. And it's just the dark and the medium that are going to be in this block. And it's going to start with a tiny square. We're going to cut some strips for these, and that is block number 1. That should be nice and simple. Our unit number 2, or B, is the flying geese. So we've all made those, but this is foundation piece. If you haven't tried it, you will love it. So we're going to make 2 of the same with just the geese and 2 with squares on the end. That'll complete our star. I hope you enjoy doing this, and we'll get to cutting the fabrics and more of the surprises coming up. Here are all the pieces that we will require for our log cabin square. We're going to be working with our background number 2 fabric, a medium, and our dark. And since we're cutting triangles, squares, and strips, we won't be using a template from our pattern this time. Calculations will have already been given. Because we would like to have the straight of grain on the outside edge of our right angled triangles from the background, we'll cut them from a 4-inch square and slice it diagonally twice. This will give us the grain on the outside for the purposes of putting the greatest strength on the outside of our block. The squares can be cut in any way that you choose to cut squares, as it's going to be on the straight of grain on every angle that we like, the outside. Our other right angle triangles are cut from squares that are cut diagonally once, and I've stacked them. Doesn't matter if you stack them right sides together or wrong sides together. I did both. It won't really matter. They're versatile in terms of being able to be flipped, rotated, and always be what we need. The other square we need is a 1-inch medium square. That'll be the center of our log cabin block. The log cabin sides, the walls will be built from strips that are 3/4 inch wide by varying lengths. The medium is 8 inches. We have one from dark that's 3/4 by 6 inch, and this one is 3/4 by 10. Doesn't quite fit in my screen, but you can be assured. It's 10 inches by 3/4, and that'll give us a little bit more that we need. So get those pieces cut, and we'll stack them up in a way that will work for an A unit, a B unit, and a C unit. Here is some additional cutting of the logs to simplify construction of the walls of our log cabin block. If you don't have the handout, just pause the video here to prepare these pieces for construction. Darks, we're going to start with our center square, that's a medium. And our pattern piece, I have just circled the little dots indicating the outer rim of the square, the 1-inch square that's going to go in the center on the reverse side, and poked a hole with my pin in each of those circles so I know where that is going to be aligned. Hope that can be seen in the video. I'm going to use just the slightest bit of glue stick, just for a tiny bit of adhesive, and place that in the center, right side out, which will be our starting point, our A1 piece. Then we'll proceed as we normally do, folding and positioning, stitching, unfolding, pressing, and that whole routine. Let's set these aside for a moment and get our piece ready. So we're going to be sewing the line between 1 and 2. So we'll rotate it so our second piece is going to be on the right side of our fold. And each of the bricks that are, or logs that I've cut, are the seam measurement, which I can just show you here, is from here to here on this seam. It's a 1/2 inch. I've added a 1/2 inch, a quarter for each side, and that gives us the initial measurement of our 1 inch little piece that we're going to be adding. If I rotate this, you can see on my mat, it's 1 inch by 3/4. So each of the logs in the first 2 rounds were measured that way. Each seam was measured and a 1/2 inch added. The last round, I added an additional 1/4 inch so that we had extra for trimming. If you ever have to cut your own logs for a log cabin in advance, that's the way to do it. The seam measurement plus a 1/2, and then the last round I would do a seam measurement plus 3/4. So let's see how that works. Okay, let's get this fold creased. And again, we can use our pin marks. Well, we don't even really need to. Let's see. I haven't got this very straight. This is our 1 inch piece, and the handy thing about pre-cutting them is we just match up what's there already. So we're going to align these. Take them to the machine. I've set my seams, seam stitches. Stitch length is actually just a bit smaller this time because our seams are so small. You can either do the 2.3 or a 2.0, something like that on your machine. These threads are dancing out of my way. Okay, so we're just going to go the length of that 1/2 inch. Oh, finger trouble today. There we go. Small studio space here. Be sure you go at least to the line, if not just slightly over. Got a pretty purple in the back thread, using up some bobbin, cleaning out some bobbins. Got a teal on top, who knows. Okay, here's our little piece. We're going to fold it so tiny. I'm going to finger press and then use my little miniature clover iron set to medium to get a nice crease. Okay, piece number 3 is nicely here. Let's add this one. And this is where there's an important note regarding this particular block, and that is these seam allowances need to be trimmed smaller than a 1/4 inch so that they don't get caught in the next round. So my rotary cutter has wandered off. Here we are. So we have a 3/16 thick black line on here. I'm going to use that just so I'm just inside the 1/4 inch. Not taking much off, but I don't want to be catching that seam. So we're going to go to our stack of pre-cut logs here and take our next piece that should be the same size as what we have here. I'm going to turn this around because it's kind of a frayed edge. We'll match these up, and this is going to go together nice and quickly. Number 4, just rotating. Oh, better fold this open first. Press. I have my pencil here. Maybe I should mark my route so I know where I'm at. Oh. So 1, 2, 3. So now we're doing 4. Gotta pay attention. Okay, that's been trimmed. So here's my piece I took out. You can see my little threads. Let's try again. Line this one up, and here we go. Okay, one more round completed. We're just going to add our last row of blocks. Here we go. Number, what, 9, 10. Flying geese blocks are very simple to do with foundation piecing, and I think you'll find that to be true, and they're great fun when you have a sequence of them, and at some point we'll be able to do that as well. There'll be a few blocks coming up with geese flying in pairs or more, and you'll see how effective that can be. I just want to talk quickly about where our seams are going to go into the seam allowance. Whenever we have a point where the seam goes into a corner, we definitely want to include it, extending it so that everything stays in place when we press things. So I'll just draw those across here. Whenever we have two seams of our piecing that come to the place that they'll be exiting into the seam allowance, we have to determine which one will be done first and which second. So if we do between 1 and 2, this will be the first seam. We'll stop here. The seam here adding 3 will be the one that extends beyond. So that's a simple way to draw it out. The other piece, the C piece unit that has the cornerstones, is going to be very similar to a certain degree. This first seam here, you can see that 2 seams are meeting here. When we just have one inside our foundation piece, we're going to have to see which one comes first. We will be doing this angle first on both sides of that larger triangle, so we will stop at that one, and as before with our B, we will extend beyond when we come to this intersection here the second time. So we can transfer this extension as well to this one. It'll go into there. When we're doing the cornerstone that we're adding on, it will be our second time here and our only time here. So we will extend beyond on both sides of this one, as will with this last piece that we're adding. So it's when it's the only seam crossing on our solid line, it should go into the seam allowance. If there are 2 seams that meet, then it'll be the second time or the last time that we're going there. I hope that kind of makes sense, and you can sketch it onto your own patterns so that you have that for reference and get in the habit of thinking how that might work. I left the numbers off simply because it's a chance for you to see how this process works, and recognizing that, you know, this unit number, the beginning one is the biggest one, and we'll be adding to either side. We could do it 1, 2, 3, and it would be fun for you to try it and see how that works, positioning it. I would challenge you to do a few and see if there is a wrong way to add them in sequence in this case. Oh, I don't have an eraser on this pencil. It's been worn off. But anytime that you're doing the largest one first, you could add either this one or that one next. So it doesn't really matter. And then with this one as well, sometimes patterns that are setting this one up, I'll use this blank one. You could start with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 if you wanted. You could start with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know if there are any other ways to do it, but there are a number of ways that get you to the same place. So you don't really need to be stuck to the numbering. And if you do the number 2 instead of number 3, it's not going to be a problem. You'll find that as you go along. I just wanted to give that opportunity to you to look at the numbering sequences as another pattern designer may choose to have you start at one end and add them across. There's no right or wrong way, as long as you end up with what you want in the end. So let's begin sewing our first of the 2B units. We're going to be starting with our larger right angle triangle, and this is the right side facing. We will start with the right side down, and we will position our piece over top. I'm going to set it this way so the long side is down at the bottom, and we have plenty, as you can see, of fabric for this triangle. I have creased this already, but I will just show you. I'm going to do the fold over Now you can adhere this again as we have in the previous block. We used a little bit of glue to hold it in place, and that is a nice comfortable way to feel that we've got that settled. So now we can trim this off, or we can use the glue that's on there and just slide it over so we have a 1/4 inch beyond our fold. Gives us lots of extra on this side, but we would have to trim it off one side or the other. So then we're going to look at our right angle triangle. And we see this is the long side. And we're going to have this right side up, and we'll match the long side to the long side behind our piece. It's this at right angle that we were looking at before in previous blocks, so that this is the 90 degree, and it's facing down to the bottom left underneath here. So we'll just position this. And I can see it's extending a little bit beyond here. I know I've got some extra beyond my outside of the paper, and at the bottom as well. So we can just take that to the machine. Grab my little threads that run away all the time on me. My machine's not very happy when I start with nothing underneath it. Come here. Okay. We're starting right on the edge. And extending, whoops, my paper has shifted a bit, beyond the line. Straighten this up. There we go. So we'll fold it back. And with the bias being sewn to the paper, it gives it stability, so we shouldn't have too much misbehaving going on there. All right. Just 3 simple pieces to this block. Oh, don't need to see my wild rice paper. We do have ample on these triangles, but that's okay. It's better to have more than be short with our corners and such. Standard 1/4 inch trim. And our right angle triangle this time, the 90 degree is on the bottom right. So we will take one of these, make sure the right angle is on the bottom right. The long edge is on the same side as this one, and we'll just position it. I'm going to scooch this way to the right, I should say, just this way. I wasn't pointing. I'm going to wiggle it down because I don't need this much blue beyond the bottom of the paper. I do want to make sure I have this triangle extending enough so that I can see it's going past this edge of paper. So I can see where this triangle meets here, this edge parallel to that edge is a little bit beyond, which makes sure that I have enough for in the seam allowance. Okay. Going from raw edge to raw edge for this seam. So it'll be extending beyond because this is the last time we're coming this way. Now we know there are many, many ways to make flying geese. This one is wonderful. The smaller the geese are, the better this works. And the one beautiful thing as well with this is the point that we get here at the top. Once we've pressed this well with a bit of starch and come to square it up, and when we square it up so that our 1/4 inch line is on the solid line, it is going to intersect beautifully in that right here where that point is. We'll be adding a perfect 1/4 inch when we trim this, and it'll ensure that that point is going to be exactly in the seam, and it looks very crisp. It's one of the most beautiful things about doing it with paper, especially when you do several. Okay, so we'll make the other one of this, and then we'll move on to our C unit. Once all of your units have been created, we'll give them a really good press with some best pressed or a similar starch. Square them up using a ruler, giving you lots of lines so you can take advantage of a diagonal line. Square as you normally would up one side and across. Rotate 180 degrees to do the other two sides. These have been trimmed already. And then remove the papers in reverse order of construction. I'm pulling 13 off, and then I'll remove 12, etc. So do that for all of these. Our B block is a beautiful little goose. It's going to be 2.5 wide by 1.5 tall. And again, any diagonal lines that you can use, take advantage of, like this one, for trimming up. Ensuring that the line goes on a diagonal, and we have our 1/4 inch markings on our solid line, and we'll be trimming to the dashed line. The same will take place for our C block. We'll need a larger ruler. I'll use my 2.5, which I like, these Olfa ones that are clean, easy to see. I'm going to take advantage of a line like this, which is my 1 inch, and this line here on the sewing line. So any lines that you have on your ruler that you can use to balance things out are extremely helpful. And again, remove all of your little pieces. And we'll be assembling them from the center and applying a B on either side of our A. And we'll be pressing the seams in towards the middle so that the bulk of this goose block, of all the layers that we have here, will be able to lay nice and flat. Once those are sewn, we'll be applying our C blocks, probably in this direction when we're putting it together. Sew that one, and then the other to the other side, and press these seams open to distribute the bulk of the seams, the seam allowances that have been built up. And we'll have corners here, and we have these, and if we distribute them evenly, we'll get a really nice crisp block. If you need